everyone. Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, the Broncos were back at practice today as they continued to prepare to face the Houston Texans this Sunday. We'll hear from head coach Sean Payton, quarterback Russell Wilson, and safety Justin Simmons as they all spoke to the media. All that and more coming up. The Denver Broncos were back on the practice field today as they set their sights on the Houston Texans. The Broncos will travel to Texas this weekend for the start of a 3-game road stretch. And head coach Sean Payton and quarterback Russell Wilson talked today about how they approach these road games.
You know, when the season comes out, I don't think you look at – I always say this, you look at where you're playing some teams, but, you know, we played a number of home games, and you're really just looking at this week, you know. I do know that the remaining 6 for the away are all inside, and then the other 2 are here outside. But I don't think there's anything different relative to playing on the road versus home or 3 games. It's not a big deal.
I think rather than thinking of it as a challenge, I think you look at it as an opportunity. I think the thing about, you know, where we want to go and all the things that you want to be able to do and accomplish, you got to go on the road, for big moments sometimes. And I think the best thing about it is you just look at it as a collection of moments. You know, it's not any bigger game than any other. All the games are important. All the games are significant. And I think that you're just a collection of 75 moments within a game that you want to have great moments. And I think the best part that we can do is really focus on us. Communication is really important. Eye contact's really important. All of that. And then at the end of the day, you got to make plays. You know, players make plays, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to be ready to rock and roll and play great football.
And as they look ahead to the Texans, both quarterback Russell Wilson and safety Justin Simmons talked today about Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud and how impressed they've been with him.
Yeah, I think C.J.'s been impressive, man. He's been having one of the best rookie years, ever. And I think that, I've been able to watch, what he's done, his greatness so far. He's got a great, he's got a great gene in him. I call it the clutch gene. He's got some it factor to him. And you see that. You saw that in college too, So I think it translates from college to especially the league that he played in and the Big Ten and everything else. So I think it's translated.
The number one thing that comes to mind is poise. When you watch him on film, he's been in a lot of tough situations. Game-winning drives, and he's put up big numbers. But I think it's the poise for me as a young guy to be able to go in and execute when he needs to. The number one thing that comes to mind, there's multiple cases of this, but they played the Bengals, and he throws almost like a pick six, and the next drive he comes out there and it's not even affecting him. And that could be challenging for a young quarterback or any player in general, to give up a play like that and then to come back and finish out the game. So he's got a lot of talent, and it's going to be a great challenge for us defensively going down to Houston and trying to get a big AFC win.
Plus, head coach Sean Payton and Russell Wilson went on to talk about Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans and what they've seen from his defense.
Well, they play hard as can be, and that's how he was as a player. I remember, when he was in Houston, and so you see that on film. You see the 11 guys to the ball. It's very evident on tape. It's a similar scheme that they ran in San Francisco. And so you're able to – each week's different. You're able to look at the structure of the defense and say, all right, this is what it is. Now it just presents different challenges, how the ends play, how the inside tackles play. But they play hard. They're getting pressure on the quarterback, and they've been good against the run. I mean, when you watch them, it's a tough group to run the ball against. And like I said, conversely, with their offense and even their kicking game, this is a young team, that believes, and that's a dangerous opponent.
Well, I think obviously Coach DeMeco Ryans, he was a great player, obviously a great coach. I had to go against him several times over the years, and just he coaches his guys with a great discipline, great tenacity on the defensive side of the ball. They fly around, they do a lot of great things. He was doing that at the 49ers. He's done it here with the Texans, and it's been impressive just to watch what they've done, the turnaround they've had, and everything else. I think that he's an enthusiastic coach. He's a detailed coach, and they got great players.
Russ also talked about how he approaches these high-stake games and how he stays neutral despite the team's recent success.
I think that's part of the reason why I always tell you guys about, talk about being neutral. I just really believe it. I've, gone through some of the highest, best moments, gone through a couple lows. And, I think that you just be even keel and understand that you keep working. It's all about the work. It's all about the passion. It's all about the love of the game. It's all about the detail. And then what happens is that when you do have success, it normalizes for you. You understand that that's who we're destined to be. That's who we are. That's who we can be. And I think, and the best part about it is then everybody starts believing it and knowing it and seeing it and feeling it. So I think that's what have been experiencing so far. And we haven't done anything yet, though. We got a lot more work to do, a lot more football left. And we believe in each other. We believe in ourselves. And I think the best part is I think each guy individually believes in themselves.
Justin Simmons added to that, talking about the team's mentality as they head into a game that could affect their playoff picture.
That's the beauty of playing this game is you want to go into a game where, hey, such and such and such and such is at stake, right? And, we're talking about playoffs and all that other stuff. But to answer your question more specifically, the best way to answer it is this is the biggest game of the season because it's the next game. And I think for us, it's why I'm so proud of the guys and the way that we've been handling things is because there has been a little bit of success, but the preparation and the work behind that has never changed and has never wavered. Last week's game was a huge game in terms of, you're talking about the bigger picture of continuing to play past the regular season. But the guys came in and worked and, didn't change anything that they were doing and put their head down and, hey, we'll do what we need to do and we'll look up at the end of the game to see where we're at. And so that's the mindset for us is this is the biggest game of the season because it's the next game and it's a must-have win for us. And it's against a great opponent. So we have our work cut out for us defensively and we're going to have to pack our defense going on the road in order to win in Houston.
Now it's time to take a look at today's injury report. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy did not participate in today's practice. Kicker Will Lutz and wide receiver Marvin Mims Jr. were limited. And outside linebacker Baron Browning and wide receiver Brandon Johnson were both full participants. Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio for a more in-depth look at today's news is fellow team reporter Phil Milani. Phil, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Sid. Ready to go in depth.
Oh, yeah. Phil, this is a high-stakes AFC matchup this weekend. Arguably one of the biggest games of the season. Both teams heading into this one 6-5.
It's going to be a big game. I think excited to just see how, every week, when you keep winning, each game gets a little bit more important. And so far the Broncos have responded in those types of games. But, another big AFC game here. You want to be able to have the tiebreakers over teams like Houston come the end of the season. So, this is going to be a big one. And this is a Houston team that is a lot like the Broncos. They've got a new head coach there this season. They've got good quarterback play. Their defense plays with a lot of confidence. So, these two teams are very similar. And up until last week, the Texans had won 3 in a row. And then literally at the last second last week against Jacksonville, the kick goes off the crossbar and they end up losing that one. So, this is going to be a tough test for the Broncos.
Definitely will. That was a good game last week versus Jacksonville for them. Looking at the Texans, I know, Sean Payton, Justin Simmons, Russ even talked about C.J. Stroud earlier today. He looks like an experienced quarterback out there. He does not look like a rookie at all. Yeah,
very poised. Seems very comfortable in the pocket. Big guy who can move around. He had a rushing touchdown last week. Able to throw the ball down the field really well. That's where a good chunk of his yardage has come from. But he's on pace to set the rookie record for quarterbacks for the most passing yards. He's on pace to break Andrew Luck's record. And it's not just him and Tank Bell together. That duo, they're, I think, on pace to be the best rookie duo for both of them. So I think that he's going to be a significant challenge. And it's been interesting here. The last couple of weeks, the Broncos have faced younger quarterbacks, that have been on an uptick. And now it's C.J. Stroud, who might be the best of all of them. So, but still a young quarterback. So, I think that the recipe sort of stays the same. Try to get pressure on him. Try to make him think out there. Anytime players are thinking a little bit too much, it means you're not playing as fast. So make them think, give them different looks, try to disguise some stuff, and then bring a lot of pressure. And you saw the Broncos do that last week where, PJ Locke is coming on a safety blitz, and you're just doing different kinds of things to make a younger quarterback who hasn't seen everything, make him think a little bit longer. But Stroud has been amazing. Only 5 interceptions this year. That is truly outstanding.
It's funny. Last week with the Browns, the defense went against a run-heavy offense. Now they're looking at a pass-heavy offense. I mean, you mentioned Tank Dell. They have a lot of talented receivers out there.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. And it's like a lot of speed and good size. So, the secondary is going to have to be on it, I think. The Broncos secondary has been playing very well, though. They have not given up a 75-yard receiver since week 5.
Oh, wow.
So they've really turned things around.
Phil.
Yeah, that's a good little stat there. So, and they've not given up a 50-yard receiver plus a touchdown since week 5 either. So they've done a good job against opposing receivers, the number 1 targets. PS2 has done a good job against that guy. And so, but this team likes to really go down the field, though. So
they do.
A little bit different than playing the Browns a week ago, a physical team that really likes to run the ball. It's going to be interesting to see who dictates what kind of game this is. Will the Broncos defense be able to say, hey, we're going to play this smash mouth physical style of football, or will it be the Texans who say, no, we're going to air this thing out and make you guys play this way? It's going to be sort of a battle on which style of game it's going to be, I think.
Well, the Texans, I mean, their defense doesn't get talked about a lot because of how good their offense is and CJ Stroud. But I mean, with D'Amico Ryans head in that group, I mean, they're pretty good too.
Yeah, and Sean Payton was asked about that today and said, look, you see a lot of same things that you saw with the 49ers.
Right.
You're seeing a lot of that here with Houston, and they've got a lot of talent on that side of the ball too. Fortunately for the Broncos, Russell Wilson has never lost to D'Amico Ryans as a defensive coordinator. They played each other, obviously, with Seattle and the 49ers there. So, it's going to be a good matchup. I think the Broncos, they want to start things up front. The offensive line, I think we talked to 3 of the offensive linemen in the locker room today. Mike McGlinchey, Garrett Bowles, Lloyd Cushenberry III. These guys, they're sort of getting sort of an identity here a little bit. Like, hey, we've got a talented offensive line. We're going to run the ball on you guys and force you to try and stop that. And then if you do, we're going to try and beat you over the top. And, for the Broncos, I think that's a good mentality to have. Hey, we're going to try and dictate the pace of this game where you're going to have to try and stop some really talented running backs. Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine last week, really getting it done on the ground. 39 rushes, Sid. I think that anytime you're around that 40 carry mark, you're winning those kind of football games. Definitely. So if it can be that kind of a style of game, I think the Broncos will find some success. But I think the nice thing about this offense is that if they try to take that away, Russ is more than capable of beating you down the field too.
Absolutely.
So you talk about Cortland Sutton, the chemistry those guys have. Jerry Jeudy has made a couple of plays here over the last few weeks, and even Marvin Mims, the catch he had on 3rd down last week, it was a deflected pass. He had to reach behind him and make that catch. That just goes to show that he's still locked in.
Definitely.
Even though he's getting not a lot of targets, he's still locked in. So
might be getting Brandon Johnson back too. I know he was back at practice.
He returned to practice. So there's some good depth there at that wide receiver spot. So if they need to, I think they can try to beat you that way too. But they want to start up front.
Yeah. Phil, there was a lot of talk today about, with this team being on a 5-game win streak, the mentality and the approach to each game. And I know, Russ has always talked about staying neutral and being able to focus on week by week. And I know Justin, he mentioned something that kind of stuck out to me. He said, everything's a little bit heightened right now in the locker room and the vibes and everything, but they do have to take it game by game because you can't get it ahead of yourselves.
Yeah, I think so. And, I think that the teams that tend to overlook their opponent a little bit, those are the teams that right out of the gate, they just hit the ground running and they jump out to they're 7-2 or something like that. Or they're like the Eagles, that they just one loss here, but they're just rolling over teams. this Broncos team is not really in that same position. You know, they know how hard they've worked to get to this point. So, and they know how slim a margin some of these games, they come right down to the wire. So I don't think that that's happening. And the other thing that we heard from some of these guys, they were talking about how difficult Wednesday practices are in particular, and like how much like detail goes into some of these practices. You know, I forget who we were talking to, but they said, oh, I think it was Javonte Williams. He said, sometimes if you're not executing in practice like the exact details that Sean wants, he'll just restart the period. You know, and so these guys are really locked in, I think, now, and they know what the expectation from the coaching staff is. So, you know, I think by preparing so hard during the week, you once you come to game time, you're locked in, you're just ready to roll here. So, no, I think for this Broncos team, it really does start in practice. And these practices have been tough. They've been physical. The scout team has been, you know, Sean Payton talked about how the scout team's been giving the defenses really good looks. So I do think that practice is where some of this turnaround has changed, just in the detail, the physicality, just understanding what the expectation is. That started in practice, and now you're seeing it really carry through into some of these games. Yeah.
It's like our good friend Steve Atwater. He always says, you know, if you practice hard, then the game will be easy.
Game is easy. Yeah, exactly. You know, and so coming from Steve, that just tells you that's what it is. That's what it's like. So.
Well, a couple critical games coming up, Phil, in a 3-game road stretch. I know head coach Sean Payton and Russell Wilson talked about it earlier, and, you know, they're not bothered by it. You know, it's not a challenge for them, but gosh, I don't like a 3-game road stretch. That's a challenge.
It is hard, I think, for staff, because like maybe you try to get away a little bit on a Saturday afternoon or something like that. That's just gone now. So I do think that for some people working with the organization, you know, you're working Monday through Friday, Saturday there's practice, and then you're on the road. And so like by the time you get to that third one, it's tough. But I do think that for the players, if you just take it 1 week at a time, you're like, this is just a road game. You know,
you're
like
not
it's
thinking
not
about 3 road games in a row.
Exactly. You got to just take it one at a time here. And I think it's this one's in Houston. That's just an hour away.
That's true.
That's sort of a shorter road trip.
LA too the next week.
LA the next week, and then to Detroit. So
not
I
long
think
road trips then.
Yeah, it's not terrible. 2 of them are in a dome, you know, and the other one's in LA, which is, you know, kind of might as well be a dome. So
good point.
I think that these kind of factors play into it. And, you know, when the Broncos go to LA, there's a lot of Broncos fans in there. So I think if you just take it 1 game at a time, I think that's the best way to approach it, like from a football perspective. But it is hard. I think the organization's only done it 9 times in its history, 3 in a row. But
very common.
It is hard. Yeah. I remember 2014, they did this. That was a pretty good Broncos team, and they went on the road to St. Louis at that time to play the Rams, and they lost that game to a not very good Rams team. And you were like, maybe this is the impact of playing 3 games in a row on the road there. Not quite just like sharp that day for the Broncos. So you do hope that they're able to keep this streak going, keep it going, but it does start 1 week at a time, I think. Well, as cliche as that sounds.
It's true, though. It's true. Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen this time around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Phil, thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you very much, Sid. Always fun on a Wednesday.
Yes, it is. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Broncos Now, Broncos Country. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode. I'll see you all then.